A total of 67 members of Congress have just signed a formal censure resolution against a sitting president. That includes 12 Republican senators who broke ranks with their own party to join the effort. This isn't some symbolic protest or political grandstanding. This is a bipartisan rebuke sparked by a leaked internal memo so damaging that even longtime allies couldn't remain silent. When a dozen Republican senators publicly attach their names to a censure motion against a president from their own party, you know something catastrophic has just erupted in Washington. Hit that subscribe button right now because you won't want to miss any of the videos I release. So, what set off this unprecedented move? A leaked White House memo alleges direct obstruction of a federal investigation with specific instructions to delay document production and coach potential witnesses. Sources who have reviewed the document say the language is explicit and unambiguous. This isn't just another partisan skirmish or policy disagreement. Members of the same party are joining opposition lawmakers to formally condemn a sitting president's conduct. And believe me, when senators break ranks like this, you know something enormous has just detonated. It's honestly hard to believe we're watching elected officials from both parties unite against the president in a way we haven't seen since the final days of Watergate. Here's the full picture of what's been unfolding. Tensions on Capitol Hill have been building for months, fueled by ongoing investigations, stonewalled subpoenas, and repeated clashes between the White House and congressional oversight committees. But everything escalated on January 14th when a classified memo was leaked to members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. The memo, dated December 19th, reportedly documents specific directives from senior White House officials to federal agencies, instructing them to withhold documents from congressional investigators and to coordinate responses with potential witnesses before their scheduled testimony. This wasn't about executive privilege debates or standard legal maneuvering. It was about allegedly instructing government employees to obstruct an active congressional investigation. Smash that like button if this is making sense so far. Here's where it really gets serious. When members of the Senate Judiciary Committee reviewed the memo in a secure briefing room, several Republicans recognized immediately that this crossed a line that couldn't be ignored. And let's be honest for a moment. Censure resolutions against sitting presidents are extraordinarily rare. They don't happen over policy disagreements or political feuds. They happen when lawmakers believe a president has fundamentally violated their oath of office or crossed constitutional boundaries that demand a formal response. Here's what multiple sources say happened next. On January 15th, a bipartisan group of senators held an emergency closed-door meeting in the Capitol basement after the secure briefing concluded. The group included 43 Democrats, 12 Republicans, and 2 independents. Sources told reporters that Senator Marcus Whitfield, the Republican chairman of the Senate Ethics Committee from Wyoming, reportedly stated that remaining silent would make every senator complicit in the obstruction. Meanwhile, Senator Diana Hartwell, the ranking Democrat on Judiciary from Michigan, called the memo's contents a clear abuse of executive authority that strikes at the heart of congressional oversight powers. By the end of that 4-hour session, the group had drafted a formal censure resolution released publicly on January 16th. The resolution accuses the administration of systematic obstruction of legitimate congressional oversight functions, witness tampering through coordinated testimony preparation, and deliberate violations of constitutional separation of powers. Reporters who obtained the full text note the language is unusually harsh. The resolution accuses the president of betraying the public trust, subverting the rule of law, and treating congressional authority with contempt. It demands full compliance with outstanding subpoenas within 14 days and calls for the appointment of an independent counsel to investigate the alleged obstruction. Drop a comment right now if you saw this coming. I read every single one. Now, things get absolutely explosive. When that memo was reviewed in the secure briefing room, even senators who had defended this president through every prior controversy couldn't justify what they read. Senator Marcus Whitfield, who has been one of the president's most reliable supporters for over 3 years, stood before cameras outside the Capitol with visible emotion and announced he would be leading the censure effort himself. The bombshell moment came during a press conference that same afternoon. Whitfield's voice cracked as he explained that as a former federal prosecutor and a lifelong conservative, he could no longer remain silent in the face of evidence showing the executive branch actively obstructing legitimate congressional oversight. He stated that when a president instructs federal employees to hide documents and coordinate false testimony, that president has forfeited any claim to good faith cooperation. This move sent shockwaves through Washington. When a Republican committee chairman publicly breaks with a president from his own party to lead a censure effort, it signals one thing. The evidence is so damning that political survival now depends on distancing oneself rather than defending the indefensible. The administration's claims of a partisan witch hunt collapse when members of the president's own party are leading the charge for accountability. This isn't the first time pressure has built against a president over alleged obstruction. Think back to Richard Nixon and the Saturday Night Massacre. When Nixon fired the special prosecutor investigating Watergate in October 1973, public outrage was immediate. Republican senators began privately telling Nixon he had lost their support. The pressure grew so intense that senior GOP leaders eventually went to the White House and told him directly that he couldn't survive an impeachment vote. Nixon resigned within 10 months of that massacre. Then there was Bill Clinton during the Lewinsky investigation. While Clinton faced impeachment in the House, the Senate ultimately acquitted him. The key difference was that Clinton's misconduct, though inappropriate and dishonest, was viewed by most senators as personal rather than an attack on the constitutional powers of Congress itself. Calls for his removal never gained significant Republican support because senators saw the underlying conduct as fundamentally different from Watergate-style obstruction. Subscribe immediately if you haven't yet. This content doesn't exist anywhere else. And let's not forget the first impeachment over Ukraine in 2019 and 2020. Some Republicans privately expressed concern about the conduct, but publicly they maintained unified support. The party stayed together even when evidence of wrongdoing seemed clear to many observers because they framed it as policy disagreement rather than constitutional violation. Now, however, the calculus has changed. This time, Republicans are publicly joining the censure effort. The pattern throughout American history is clear. When presidents abuse power in ways that directly attack the constitutional authority of Congress itself, even their own party eventually reaches a breaking point. Political loyalty alone cannot hold when the institution itself is under assault. So, what allegedly triggered this unprecedented reaction? According to legal and constitutional experts who have reviewed descriptions of the leaked memo, the actions described would violate fundamental principles of separation of powers and potentially multiple federal obstruction statutes. The memo reportedly shows specific written instructions from White House Chief of Staff Raymond Kellner directing the Department of Justice and multiple executive agencies to delay production of documents responsive to congressional subpoenas until after the 2026 midterm elections. But here's the kicker. The memo reportedly includes explicit instructions about witness coordination. Sources say the document describes a program to brief potential congressional witnesses on approved talking points before their testimony, with the stated goal of ensuring consistent messaging across agencies. Legal experts immediately flagged this as potential witness tampering under federal law. Don't go anywhere. The most explosive part is coming next. And here's what should alarm everyone, regardless of political affiliation. This isn't just about one memo or one isolated decision. If a president can instruct federal agencies to defy congressional subpoenas and coordinate witness testimony without consequence, congressional oversight becomes meaningless. Once that precedent is set, every future president could treat Congress as an inconvenience to be managed rather than a co-equal branch to be respected. The constitutional framework itself begins to crumble. This puts Republicans in Congress in a nearly impossible position. On one side, they face pressure from a base that remains fiercely loyal to this president and views any criticism as betrayal. That means defending the administration regardless of evidence, attacking the leak as the real crime, and framing the entire situation as a deep state conspiracy to undermine a duly elected president. On the other side, they are forced to reckon with conduct that, according to their own colleagues who reviewed the memo, constitutes a direct attack on the constitutional powers of the legislative branch. They now have to explain to constituents why a president should be allowed to hide documents from Congress and coach witnesses before testimony. That position is nearly impossible to defend in public. And here's the uncomfortable reality. There's no credible middle ground here. Either the memo is accurate, in which case the actions described are indefensible, or it's fabricated, which would require believing that multiple senators from both parties are lying about what they saw in a classified briefing. Neither option provides political cover. Legal and political analysts are calling this a constitutional crisis unfolding in real time. Professor Harrison Mitchell, a constitutional law scholar at Georgetown University Law Center, told CNN that if the memo's descriptions are accurate, we are witnessing the most significant abuse of executive power since Watergate. He explained that the Constitution gives Congress the power to investigate the executive branch, and when a president actively obstructs that investigation, he is attacking the constitutional order itself. Do me a favor and slam that like button because it genuinely helps this video reach more people. Former federal prosecutor Amanda Chen, now a legal analyst for NBC News, added that the conduct described in the memo could potentially constitute multiple federal felonies. She noted that obstruction of a congressional proceeding carries up to 20 years in prison, and witness tampering carries up to 10 years. These are serious federal crimes, not political disagreements. Even Jonathan Rasmussen, a conservative legal scholar at the Heritage Foundation who has frequently defended presidential authority, acknowledged that the allegations are deeply troubling. He emphasized that while presidents have broad discretion in managing the executive branch, using that authority to actively obstruct congressional investigations crosses a constitutional line that should concern everyone regardless of party. So, let's break down what this could mean. First, the political impact is immediate and severe. There is now a formal bipartisan censure resolution that includes 12 Republican senators. While censure carries no legal penalty, its symbolic weight is enormous. It signals to other Republicans that breaking ranks is not only acceptable, but may be politically necessary. Before this resolution, many Republicans feared that any criticism could end their careers. Now, respected party leaders have given them cover, potentially triggering a cascade effect of more lawmakers speaking out. Second, it creates massive problems for the administration's legal strategy. The resolution demands full document production within 14 days and calls for an independent counsel. If the administration continues to stonewall, senators from both parties are now on record calling the conduct obstruction. That gives federal judges clear political cover to enforce subpoenas aggressively and potentially hold officials in contempt. Finally, the broader political implications are profound. This fundamentally changes the landscape for the 2026 midterm elections and beyond. Every Republican candidate will face questions about whether they support a president who allegedly obstructed congressional oversight. Campaign ads are already being cut featuring the 12 Republican senators who signed the censure resolution asking why their colleagues won't join them. This is creating a wedge issue that goes beyond typical partisan divides because congressional authority and constitutional separation of powers have traditionally commanded bipartisan respect. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. I'm genuinely curious to see your perspective. But beyond the immediate political fallout, this is really about fundamental constitutional principles. The power of Congress to investigate the executive branch is essential to our system of checks and balances. It is how we ensure that presidents and their administrations operate within the law. If a president can obstruct that oversight without consequence, we no longer have co-equal branches of government. We have an executive who operates above the law. This scenario is causing sheer panic within Republican leadership. Reports indicate that Senate Minority Leader Thomas Brandt held emergency conference calls with his caucus to determine a unified response. Some argued for circling the wagons and attacking the leak itself, claiming that classified information shouldn't have been disclosed to the press. Others insisted that the substance of the allegations demanded a response regardless of how the memo became public. The party is fracturing in real time, torn between tribal loyalty and institutional responsibility. Meanwhile, the president's core supporters are absolutely furious at the Republican senators who signed the censure resolution. Social media is flooded with calls to primary every lawmaker who broke ranks. They're being labeled traitors, rhinos, and deep state collaborators. To the base, this feels like the ultimate betrayal, proof that even Republicans can't be trusted to stand against what they perceive as a coordinated attack on their president. Things escalated further when the president himself responded with a series of posts on Truth Social. He called the censure resolution a disgraceful hoax and a witch hunt orchestrated by radical Democrats and weak Republicans who hate America. He claimed the memo was fabricated by rogue intelligence officials trying to undermine his administration. He specifically named all 12 Republican senators who signed the resolution, calling them cowards, sellouts, and political hacks who will pay a tremendous political price. Stay with me. What comes next will completely change how you view the situation. Here's what makes it even more extraordinary. The president's own response essentially confirmed the strategic problem his team faces. Instead of addressing the specific claims in the memo directly, the reaction was pure fury and personal attacks on the Republicans who broke ranks. When your defense is attacking those exposing the evidence rather than disputing the evidence itself, you've already signaled that the evidence may be accurate. Legal experts immediately flagged this dynamic. Professor Mitchell noted that attacking the senators rather than rebutting the specific allegations actually strengthens the case against the president. He explained that if the memo were truly fabricated, the White House would produce evidence showing the instructions were never issued. Their failure to do so speaks volumes. This goes far beyond a single controversy or a single memo. It's about whether a president can treat congressional oversight as optional. If there are no consequences for allegedly instructing federal employees to hide documents and coordinate testimony, it signals that the executive branch is effectively above the law. It's not just about this administration or this president. It's about whether the presidency itself has meaningful constitutional constraints when it comes to congressional authority. If this blows your mind, hit that like button right now. Here's the situation. A bipartisan group of 67 members of Congress has formally introduced a censure resolution accusing the president of obstruction and constitutional violations after reviewing evidence of alleged interference with congressional oversight. This is no longer just partisan politics or another Washington food fight. It's about whether we accept a president instructing federal agencies to defy subpoenas and coach witnesses before congressional testimony. When 12 Republican senators openly break with their own party's president over constitutional concerns, we've entered genuinely unprecedented territory. If there are no consequences, it sets a dangerous precedent that future commanders-in-chief could treat congressional oversight as nothing more than a political inconvenience to be managed through obstruction. Keep a close eye on this story. The 14-day deadline for document production expires on January 30th. More Republican senators are reportedly reviewing the classified memo and weighing whether to add their names to the censure resolution. The Senate Judiciary Committee has scheduled a public hearing for February 3rd, where they will vote on whether to refer the matter to the Department of Justice for criminal investigation. And administration officials who received the obstruction instructions are now facing pressure to testify about what they were told to do. Before we go any further, smash that subscribe button so you never miss content like this. Here's where things stand right now. 67 elected officials have put their careers on the line by formally declaring that a sitting president violated his constitutional obligations. Republican senators who built their careers on supporting this president have broken ranks because the evidence was simply too damaging to ignore. Meanwhile, the administration's response has been to attack the messengers rather than address the message. This isn't just another news cycle that will fade away. This is a constitutional crisis unfolding in real time. What happens next could determine whether congressional oversight has any meaningful force at all. The evidence is out there. The censure resolution has been introduced. The deadline has been set. Now we wait to see if accountability still holds any weight in Washington. The stakes have never been higher. The evidence has never been more damning. And the constitutional crisis has never been more immediate. Pause for a second and hit that like button if you're finding value in this coverage.